She demoted me, cut my benefits, and still expected me to work like I was trying to win Employee of the Year. So I did exactly what my new contract said. Nothing more. This happened a couple years ago, but I need to give a little context first. I grew up dirt poor in the South. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. When you grow up counting every dollar, collecting cans for cash, and working outside all day with your dad, you learn 2 things fast: how to outwork people and how to read people. I'm not saying that to brag. It's just the truth. I absorb information quickly, I learn systems fast, and I've got a stubborn kind of endurance that doesn't shut off. It also made me perfect for malicious compliance long before I even knew the term. After graduating from a really good university, full scholarship, top-tier program, the kind of place people move across the country for, I came back to my hometown. Partly because I wanted to be near my family, and partly because I hated the Northeast where my school was. It felt gray in every way. I took a crappy job just to start earning. Then I did a short stint at a startup. Eventually, I landed a position at a government agency in my county. The pay was about double what I made at that first awful job, and for a younger guy trying to build something, it felt like a win. The catch was, that office was known for being a nightmare. Horrible turnover, bitter coworkers, constant stress. And the clients we dealt with were often the worst kinds of people. Angry, entitled, manipulative, sometimes outright dangerous. The job didn't just drain you, it hollowed you out. But the money was good enough that I accepted anyway, basically smiling as I walked into hell. I started in May, and I worked like my life depended on it. I read a 350-page handbook on my own time. I took on extra tasks just to help without logging hours. I helped coworkers even when it meant my week turned into something I didn't recognize anymore. Some days I'd show up at 8 a.m. and wouldn't get home until 2 or 3 in the morning. I canceled a date with my then serious girlfriend that we'd planned for months because I got called in urgently and didn't leave until late at night. And the reward for being good at my job was more job. The better I performed, the more they piled on. It was like the office had a 6th sense for competence and an allergy to letting it breathe. My supervisor, let's call her my boss, loved giving these speeches. Every time she saw me drowning, she'd toss out the same polished lines. This is just how it works here. It's for the good of the agency. The best employees are the ones who sacrifice and work hard for all of us. Outside of work, she could seem like a perfectly pleasant woman. But day by day, a part of me started to hate those conversations. Not because I hated hard work, I don't. I hated being manipulated into donating my life to a place that would replace me the second I stopped bleeding for them. By June, 1 month in, I was already looking for ways out. I started researching an MBA program I'd been interested in. I reached out, asked a few questions, and they encouraged me to apply. Within a couple days, the director of the program personally contacted me and asked for a quick interview. The interview lasted 15 minutes over Skype. He thanked me for my time and ended the call. Before the week was over, I got an email, full tuition scholarship. On top of that, a small monthly stipend. Nothing huge, but meaningful, if I agreed to work as a graduate assistant for 20 hours a week during the semester. I was ecstatic. I signed and sent it back immediately. In less than a week, I went from feeling trapped under an ever-growing pile of responsibilities to knowing I had an exit. The program started in January. That meant I had about 5 months left at the agency. My plan was simple: endure until late December, stack some cash, then leave. And because I'm not the type to sneak out the back door, I told my boss the truth. I explained that I'd been accepted into an MBA program with a great offer, and I'd be leaving at the end of December. She smiled, congratulated me, told me she appreciated my work, and said she'd think about options and get back to me. Then a couple weeks passed, where every hour at that office felt like it was scraping something out of me. Finally, she called me into a meeting. She told me she wanted me to stay employed with the agency, but she wanted me to move into what she described as a contract position. She said I needed to free up my current role so they could post my job, hire someone new, and start training them before I left. She framed it as doing what was best for the agency. Then she hit me with the words like they were a compliment. This is what a principled, hard-working, ethical employee like you would do, and should do. I asked what the change actually meant for me. She gave me a quick summary. That wasn't enough. One rule I learned growing up broke is, never sign anything you haven't read yourself. So I told her I wanted a week to decide, and I wanted the full paperwork, changes, duties, benefits, everything written out. She said she'd bring it the next day. The next afternoon, she handed me 12 pages printed front and back, packed with tiny text, Times New Roman, size 10, a document designed to be unreadable. The kind of paperwork where your eyes glaze over halfway through the first page. I took it home and read every word anyway. And as I read, my mood got worse and worse. The contract stripped almost all my benefits. I would lose everything except already accrued overtime hours. It was a demotion on paper, with fewer perks, fewer protections, and fewer extras that made the misery slightly worth it. Then, about halfway through, I hit a section that made me sit up straight. It stated I was required to work a maximum of 40 hours a week. Not around 40, not do your best, a maximum. And it strictly prohibited me from performing a bunch of tasks I'd been doing regularly, tasks I absolutely hated. It also made it clear I was only responsible for what was specifically described in the contract and official handbook. In other words, once my listed duties were done, I was done. No unpaid favors, no quick help, no late night emergencies, no coming in early or staying late, no covering shifts, no being the office hero. I stared at that clause like it was a lottery ticket. And as I kept reading the fine print buried in that wall of legal garbage, I felt this slow grin spread across my face. It started small, polite, almost bored. Then it grew and grew as the plan formed in my head. By the time I finished, I was smiling like the Grinch. I slept terribly that night, not from stress, but from excitement. The next morning, I walked into the office and went straight to my boss. I told her I'd accept the contract position. She looked relieved, like she'd just handled a problem. I signed the paperwork, handed it back, and she immediately started explaining what she needed me to do over the next 2 weeks. And I calmly told her I couldn't. Her face tightened. Confusion first. Then the beginning of anger, like I just disrespected her. So I explained, politely, carefully, with the same tone she used when she talked about ethics. Under the new contract, I was no longer allowed to perform several tasks I'd been doing regularly. I was also not allowed to work overtime. I was required to stop working the moment I hit 40 hours, and I had to go home. I told her I would no longer answer work calls, texts, or emails after I reached 40 hours until Monday at 8 a.m. Anything urgent would have to go to on-call staff or be reassigned. I also told her I could no longer participate in the on-call rotation at all, and they would need to find a replacement immediately, which in that office was a nightmare. I explained I could no longer help coworkers the way I had before because I no longer had the authority, the permissions, or the hours to do that work. I had no signing authority, no ability to touch certain files, no right to make certain decisions. And I kept listing the limitations, one by one, straight from the contract she gave me. She stared at me like she wanted to burn a hole through my forehead. I could practically feel the heat of her glare increasing with every sentence. When I left her office, I knew she still didn't understand what was happening. She thought this was a negotiation tactic, a protest, a bluff, but it wasn't. I went back to my desk and did the second part. See, in my previous role, you were supposed to complete formal training before you were qualified to sign off on contracts and documents. If you weren't properly trained and a lawyer found out, it could turn into a disaster in court, for you and the agency. Because my office was incompetent, I still hadn't been given that training, but they had expected me to do the work anyway from day one. I'd requested the training multiple times. Every request got ignored, delayed, we'll get to it, and then forgotten. So I opened my email and started writing. I addressed it to my supervisor, the office manager, and the regional director, same people I'd emailed before. But this time, I added a few names. IBC C'd a high-level boss from the central office, someone with real power. And IBC C'd her boss too. Networking and politeness are habits I practice constantly, and they save you when you need them. I'd been respectful in every message. Professional, clear, no drama. In the email, I asked, very politely, when I would finally receive the training I'd been promised months ago, because I was currently handling cases without the proper qualifications. I stated that I would continue doing my assigned duties until my cases could be transferred to qualified staff. Within minutes, I got a response from the highest authority I'd included, someone at the state level. She told me she was sorry to hear what was happening. She said she would personally make sure I received the necessary training immediately. She also sounded genuinely shocked that I'd been pressured into accepting a demotion just to remain employed. And then came the best part. She ordered that my salary was not to be reduced under any circumstances. So now I was demoted on paper, stripped of benefits, but still making the same money, while being contractually limited to 40 hours and a narrower set of duties. The absurdity got even better. They rushed me into training for a position I technically no longer held, and I knew those regular training sessions weren't happening anytime soon, which meant they had to send me to an emergency session in the state capital with a handful of other people from across the state. Because the capital was far from my home, policy required the agency to provide lodging and a solid per diem. During my late night digging through policy documents, I'd learned there were major events happening in that area. Hotels were expensive or unavailable. So I emailed the central office boss and explained, very sweetly, that I couldn't find any reasonably priced room near the training location. If they failed to provide lodging, it would violate policy. And I, of course, was an ethical employee who cared deeply about following rules. They panicked, and the central office boss used her authority to book me a suite at an upscale hotel, an actual luxury place that, in my world, felt ridiculous. It was the kind of hotel people from my hometown take selfies outside of. The following week, I went to training. A full week away. A week of paid time. A week in a luxury suite. A week of good food and per diem. A week where I technically had fewer benefits than before, but still got treated like I was on an official trip. And remember, this training was for a job I no longer had, and I had no intention of ever holding again. So my motivation was not strong. I attended what I had to attend. I did what was required. And the rest of the time, I enjoyed the hotel, ate well, and treated it like the closest thing to a paid vacation I'd ever gotten from that agency. When I returned to the office, the place was on fire. 2 people from my department had quit. More employees around the office were leaving. The higher-ups had started digging after my email and realized the office had been a mess for a long time. The big boss from central office moved fast and didn't play nice. She brought down the hammer of bureaucracy, and everyone felt it. Meetings, audits, scrutiny, panic, people suddenly caring about policy that they'd ignored for years. And the best part for me, my new contract meant I only had to do what was written. No more saving the office. No more carrying other people. No more staying late to clean up messes I didn't create. Because of how incompetent everything was, I could finish my actual assigned tasks in about 20 hours a week. The rest of the time, they often gave me pointless errands because the office was in chaos, like driving something from one place to another, sometimes across the state. I told them, with my most professional face, that it was a shame these errands pulled me away from my core responsibilities. But of course, I was willing to sacrifice for the agency. Those errands made it incredibly easy to work my hours. Some days I'd rack up long shifts doing almost nothing meaningful and get paid mileage on top of it. Most weeks, I'd hit 40 hours by Wednesday afternoon or Thursday morning. After that, I was unavailable, contractually. So I'd sit at my desk, headphones on, listening to music, watching the world burn from the safety of my paperwork. Once my tasks were done, I did nothing. Internet, YouTube, whatever passed the time until I hit 40. My life went from a nightmare to something almost balanced. I started enjoying time with my girlfriend again. I played video games. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned when the job owned my schedule. I even used my banked overtime from my earlier months of overwork to pay for a Caribbean cruise in November. That cruise was incredible. A bunch of my childhood friends were going too. I knew how to enjoy it, and I did. Before I left, my once powerful boss, now noticeably less confident, quietly wished me a good vacation and said she hoped I'd come back and not quit. I smiled and joked that I couldn't promise anything. I spent a week in warm water, on islands, actually thinking about what I wanted from work and life instead of just surviving. When I returned on Monday, I waited until my boss arrived. She walked in around 9:15. I could practically see her trying to read my face. And I swear, she already knew what was coming because whatever hope she had dissolved in real time. I told her I wouldn't be able to stay until the end of December after all. Due to unexpected issues with my MBA transition, I needed to leave 2 weeks early. She took it like someone trying not to show pain in public. "I understand," she said. "Thank you for your service to the agency these past 6 months. I'm sorry you're leaving." And that was it. She demoted me so she could replace me faster, stripped my benefits, and still wanted me to perform like I was trying to earn a medal. Instead, I became exactly what she said she valued. A principled, hard-working, ethical employee who followed every rule to the letter. I turned her favorite words into my shield. That demotion became a paid week in a luxury hotel, a paid training trip for a job I didn't even have anymore, and nearly 4 months of easy work where I did only what my contract required, while upper management tore the office apart, trying to clean up the mess they'd allowed. Recently, I told this story to my current girlfriend, who I actually met at that same agency. She's amazing. She makes me happier than I've ever been. I'm pretty sure I'm going to propose someday. She told me that after I left, both of my bosses, the office manager and the regional director, were eventually forced out, one, by the big boss from central office. As for me, I finished my MBA with a perfect 4.0. And next week, I have an interview for a new position. If it goes the way it looks like it's going to go, I'm about to almost double my income again.
That's where the story ends. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of this story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and see you next time.